Since I first visited Nicaragua over 15 years ago, I've been spending extended periods of time in and around San Juan del Sur. San Juan del Sur is a beachside town on the Pacific coast of the state of Rivas, just about 2 hours north of the Costa Rican border and over 3 hours away from the capital of Managua. Over the years, San Juan's become a destination for surfers, a party mecca for internationals, and a getaway for Nicaraguans from across the country. When I returned to San Juan in February of 2022, I discovered a new and completely unexpected element in town. A growing community of expats who described themselves as freedom refugees. They'd arrived from Canada, California, Australia, and from as far away as the Pacific Rim of Asia. But mostly, they were from Canada. They had come to Nicaragua with one-way tickets, leaving jobs and extended families behind, all to escape the COVID-19 restrictions, which they said had made life unbearable, and which heralded, in their view, a dystopian new order on the horizon. The vaccine mandates, months and months of lockdowns, school closures, masking requirements, censorship, speech codes, official demonization of the unvaccinated, the social polarization, and the reflexive, lockstep conformism of friends and family members. These were the conditions that drove those I met in San Juan toward a decision they thought they would never make. They wanted their freedom back, and they found it in Nicaragua, under the watch of a socialist-oriented government demonized in Western media as an oppressive dictatorship.
Pretty bad in Canada, and we were just starting to feel more and more uncomfortable, and what we were being asked to do by having these vax passports. We have 2 yoga studios in Calgary, and we all of a sudden had to start making sure that everybody was vaccinated to come to our studio, and we just felt really uncomfortable enforcing that. And yeah, we were just like, we just want to be free. We want people to be free. We don't really want to start asking people those questions, and we felt super uncomfortable. So we thought ourselves, let's remove ourselves before we make it any more awkward.
What really distressed me in Australia was just that the changes. I was also a law student in Australia, so I'm about 3/4 of the way through a law degree. And so I'm very conscious of what goes on and what's involved and the implications of it. And what I saw was, just the destruction of the remnants of the democratic process in Australia. So all of a sudden, like where we were, there was just no issue with the disease at all. It basically didn't exist. And yet, in our state of Queensland, and yet all of a sudden there was this unelected bureaucrat who could just, by fiat, lock an entire state in their house, or force people to wear masks, or close schools, or ban whole industries from going to work.
What are we doing? Okay. What's your name? Mohammed. What's your name? Mohammed. Got some ID?
Just let me get it, for God's sake.
The pace of it was so alarming, and there was there was just no apparent need for it in Queensland, because there was no one was dying for it. Nobody even had the disease. It wasn't hardly even in our state. And all of a sudden you have to get a government phone app, and you have to sign in everywhere you go. Total abolition of privacy.
Once you've downloaded the app, it asks you for your phone number, your name, your age range and a postcode. Using Bluetooth, it then logs any user you've been in a 1.5 metre radius of for more than 15 minutes. The government maintains that it is secure and that it doesn't trace anyone's location.
Today, the call has gone out to everyone in home quarantine in Victoria to take part of our pilot program. And what that means is that they will receive random phone calls, and they have to answer within 5 5 minutes with a selfie sent to this app, which will then geo-track where that person is and to make sure that they are who they say they are as well. If they don't answer within that 5-minute period, that's when health officers come knocking. Pete?
For 2020, the year of lockdown at home, I saw as my kids just gained the weight. They actually had more problems from the online schooling and staying at home than they went to the school. So that's really disturbing me. My older daughter, she actually cried a lot because she couldn't walk out with friends to go somewhere to meet them. So it was really a problem for my family. But I know much more problems from another families, my friends. Friend of mine, her husband was diagnosed in 2020. Yes, he was diagnosed with a tumor in his head, and he was needed MRI, and he couldn't get an appointment for MRI. He waited, so he did few MRIs after a while, but last year he needed to check up if it's growing or not. And he waited for 3 months for appointment, and then they canceled it at all because of the lockdown.
When people are seeing cancer treatments and elective surgeries put off because beds are filled with people who chose not to get vaccinated, they're frustrated. When people see that we're in lockdowns or serious public health restrictions right now because the risk posed to all of us by unvaccinated people, people get angry.
I don't wish death upon them. I have 2 kids under 12, so just as a statement of fact, it would be better for me if they died. Like I would prefer. What? That's not mean. That's just true. They're spreading a disease that my kids are vulnerable to, so I don't wish them ill will. I'm just saying the fact that it would be better if they were dead. For me and my kids, it would be better.
Be better for me and my restaurants too.
When I saw that there was a lockdown coming, I decided to leave the US, and we took the last flight out, literally the last flight out before the lockdown happened. And they tried to turn us away. They said, "Oh, there's no more flights to Costa Rica." And I said, "Yes, there are." And the lady disappeared and came back 10 minutes later and said, "Oh, sorry, we were wrong." She had been turning everybody else away. So we were homeschooling our kids in Costa Rica. That was amazing. Actually, my son was still connected to the Zoom calls back to his school in the US. But when we went back to the US, I knew we weren't going to put him back in school because we just saw the brainwashing was on a different level. The kids had to wear masks, and I was not about to allow my kids to do that.
2, 3. I wear a mask to school. I wear a mask to school. Hi ho the Dario. I wear a mask to school.
Costa Rica was kind of scary to see what was happening there.
What was happening?
So when we got there, when we got to Costa Rica, we started to see all the hotels shut down, driving restrictions. They shut the beaches down. They had people were only allowed to drive in a certain area, and then on every other day or certain days a week, you can only drive based on your license plate. And we had a rental car, so we were lucky, but we saw the authoritarian kind of implementation of things.
Y después, de realizar varios disparos, la policía de Costa Rica detuvo al destacado surfista Noé Mark McGonigal después que el deportista se saltó, en definitiva, la cuarentena impuesta en ese país por la pandemia y fue a surfear a una de estas playas. Los uniformados lo descubrieron practicando el deporte y al ver a las fuerzas de seguridad, corrió, por lo que los agentes respondieron con disparos al aire sin herirlo.
We moved to Singapore when my son was 4. So shortly after we arrived in Singapore, the COVID madness started, and then he started having to wear a mask in school. You know, of course, when you have done your research on mask, you realize, hey, you know, there's actually more harm than benefit in wearing it, especially for children who are developing, right? Personally, I cannot understand people very well if they're wearing masks. And I don't think it's very fair to expect a 4-year-old, 5-year-old to learn when everybody's wearing a mask. My son was vaccine injured as a baby. He was born in the US. We moved when he was about 3.5, 4 to Singapore. And before we left, we did a comprehensive genetic analysis for our son. And it showed that he was actually at high risk of vaccine injury. And the doctor told us that if we chose to vaccinate him, continue vaccinating him, he's actually at high risk of autism or death. And also for us, you know, that was the line in the sand. Like, you know, we're not going to subject our child to this again. And in Singapore, the government's very, very heavy-handed. Currently, anybody who wants to work in Singapore, if you're not a local, you have to be vaccinated. If you are a family with a child, you have to sign a note to promise that you'll vaccinate your child within a certain period of entering the country, right? If your child is not fully vaccinated yet. So that's how strict it is.
So our son Caden was diagnosed with infant leukemia at 6 months old after his first dose of his first vaccines. And the doctors at the time admitted that it was from the vaccine. His white blood cells were overproducing, which was a natural reaction to a vaccine, but it just didn't stop. Yeah, it didn't stop. And so anyway, we lived in the hospital with him, the children's, for a year while he went through chemotherapy, and he ended up passing away at 18 months from a bacterial blood infection from the treatment. And we were devastated. Obviously, it was horrible. And at that time, even our doctor said to us he wouldn't vaccinate our future children. And so we were just like, it was pretty...
All of a sudden they're asking everybody to vaccinate with an experimental vaccine that had only been around for a few months. Never really been tested on humans before, as far as we know.
You're going to be able to get your vaccine as soon as you turn 5. And I know you're excited and I know you're eager. In some places across the country, you can even start making your appointment now for shortly after your birthday.
A 13-year-old girl in Halifax, Nova Scotia is in the hospital right now because her heart stopped after the vaccine. That's my daughter's friend. She's been in my home.
Oi! Você voltou! Você voltou! And what the children experience in the virtual world is matched step by step by the nurse that follows the story on a second screen.
Pronto. Agora o fruto de fogo. Mas ó, vamos lá. Bem rapidinho. Peraí.
All simultaneously calming and entertaining children while helping the nurses to better perform the vaccination.
Funciona! Obrigada!
I love nursing. I'm passionate about nursing. And one of the things that we learn about as nurses is bodily autonomy and the right of the individual to make their own health choices. And I just couldn't look past that. I couldn't accept the idea that the government would strip the individual of the right to make their own healthcare choices. It was so offensive to me and so immoral and unethical. I'd done so much work to learn how to respect people's rights to be in control of their own lives, and I felt like for me to lose that right, if I were to give it up, I wouldn't have a place to fight for that for my patients anymore.
If you are anti-mandate, you are absolutely anti-vax. I don't care what your personal vaccination status is. If you support, champion, give a green light, give comfort to, support anybody who argues against the vaccine, you are an anti-vaxxer, absolutely. Your personal vaccination status is utterly irrelevant.
And then the most alarming thing was what we saw was that neighbours were calling the police, calling the hotline to dob in their neighbours for having a game of backyard cricket or for having their family over for a lunch. And then you're having police knocking, neighbours dobbing on neighbours, and police knocking at, armed men coming around to your house because you have visitors that you're not allowed to have.
A man has been arrested outside a quarantine hotel after escaping from his room. Police say the 24-year-old man was returned to his Tullamarine accommodation without further incident after leaving his room without permission this afternoon.
Good morning. We start with breaking news out of Darwin, where 3 people have escaped from the Howard Springs COVID quarantine facility. Talia Sava's there for us. Talia, good morning. There's a search underway right now.
Now, major police checkpoints have been set up around Howard Springs for the past several hours. As you can see in these pictures, they've been conducting thorough searches in car boots, checking vehicle registrations, cars and buses alike.
It makes no sense, does it?
Yeah, but you can't leave your balcony to go to the fence to talk to somebody else. That's what's obvious, yeah?
So if I was at that balcony...
Make sense. So there has to be lines everywhere drawn, yeah? And one of the lines is you cannot leave your balcony and you cannot go to someone else. Where it makes no sense or it doesn't seem right to you, that is the line, and that's what the law is, yeah?
Give me a minute. Well, what is this in regards to? What's it in regards to? You haven't told me anything. Incitement for what? I told them not to go to the protest.
Now, you're under arrest in relation to incitement.
Incitement?
Now, you're not obliged to say or do anything, but anything you say or do may be given evidence.
Excuse me, incitement for what? What on earth? Excuse me, what on earth?
Just put your phone down.
Can you
record
this? I'm in my pajamas.
What's this?
I had an ultrasound in an hour.
Yeah, she's pregnant, so...
Yeah, it was such a horrific thing to see society, our culture in Australia just seemed to pick up. And it was so alarming, and it just made you think, it makes you fear for the future, because it just happened so quickly and there was just such a lack of a need for it.
So I think the straw that broke the camel's back was the fact that Trudeau came out and said that we couldn't leave the country.
You can't leave.
We couldn't leave if we were unvaccinated. We couldn't leave the country.
After November 1st, we were like, we got to get
Actually, it was October.
No, it was November.
Right. Yeah, and then he extended it after we left. We weren't allowed on planes, on a plane or a train.
And more than just being wrong, because everyone's entitled to their opinions, they are putting at risk their own kids, and they're putting at risk our kids as well. That's why we've been unequivocal. If you want to get on a plane or a train in the coming months, you're going to have to be fully vaccinated. So families with their kids don't have to worry that someone is going to put them in danger in the seat next to them or across the aisle.
My whole thing was I want to be in a community of like-minded people. I think that's actually the most important thing as we go through this, because my point of view was demonize and ostracize. I'm very vocal about it and outspoken. And so I was demonized and ostracized in my community by some people, and they would tell people not to go to my business.
Freedom. I have the freedom to kill you with my COVID. No, I mean, come on, freedom.
And not just to think about, well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom.
So Will had been talking about going and where we could go and places in the world that were more free for a while, and I'd been toying with the idea, but when we got that letter that said, all the work you've done till now, it's not enough, everything that you've given, you know, I'm a shift worker, I work night shifts and doubles, and I've studied all the years that I've been a pediatric nurse, I've been studying, and none of that was important anymore, none of that mattered. As a nurse, my only value became being a person that towed the line, you know, being a person that would follow the letter of the law and do exactly what I was told, and that was my value as a nurse, not the hours of study and the hours of sweat and tears and work. And I was so disillusioned that both my employer and my state, because I was employed by the state, would devalue me like that I couldn't stand to be there anymore. It was so insulting. It was so insulting. I just wanted to leave. I said to Will, we don't want to be here anymore. This isn't home anymore. It's done for us. We can't be in this place now. And so we went into madcap packing, and 5 weeks later we'd left.
And we were starting to feel like, oh my goodness, this is so stressful. It's just getting worse and worse. And they started talking about the vax passports. And we have close friends that lived in San Juan del Sur already.
Oh, they still do, yeah.
They still do.
Yeah.
And their kids went to the San Juan del Sur day school. And the whole time we've been watching them on social media free. I never even saw them wearing a mask the whole time. We're like...
That's where we want to be.
Yeah. And we ended up on the drive. It was like a 12-hour drive across to Vancouver from Calgary, or 11, whatever. And we were driving, and I ended up Instagram messaging her and saying, is this a crazy idea? We're kind of thinking about like moving to San Juan del Sur. Just like, do it. Come right away. We're totally free. You'll never regret it.
And so for me, I want to be around people who have the same belief system, who are looking for more truth and freedom. And in the week that I've been here and the 6 months that I've been a part of the Facebook group, I found more of that here than anywhere else.
Did you know, when it comes to Nicaragua in the U.S., sometimes you hear people say that there's like a dictatorship, that I don't know if you've heard any of that.
Oh, yeah,
That's stuff you hear all the time.
Yeah, I know how it's been demonized, and it's nothing like anything is portrayed. Like I even have friends that live in Costa Rica, and they'll say, oh, people move from Nicaragua and they say it's the worst and it's terrible and blah, 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 blah. And I'm the type of person, and this is why I think the way that I do, is I don't take anyone's word for anything.
Yeah. That was a big factor in choosing why we moved here, is we wanted someone who, rather than bowing to international pressure to toe a line, would get their back up and say, no, we're not doing what you tell us, we do things our way. And I think Nicaragua has a bit of a, there's a real streak of that in Nicaragua and in the government and in the people here, I think.
So the narrative you get told is it's a dictatorship here in Nicaragua, but you have more freedom in this dictatorship than you do in the United States. Why? I'd much rather be here. Why? Because there's not laws for everything. There's not an illusion of freedom here.
Because actually someone told someone I was in Nicaragua last night, and they just immediately said, wow, dangerous. And I said, no, it's not dangerous at all. It's actually less dangerous than Costa Rica, in my opinion, where I am now anyways. But that's also by statistics. It has the least violent crime than any country in Central, I think maybe in South America, the statistics show. So yeah, don't Google it. Don't listen to your parents. My mom Googled it. She thought I was gonna come here and be killed, and it's dangerous, and I'm never gonna come home, because I don't know what they thought, but yeah, it's a beautiful place, beautiful country, beautiful people, and I'm enjoying it, and I may make this my home long term.
We're very grateful to be here. We're really grateful that the Nicaraguan government has opened the doors for us. We're really grateful that they are accepting us, because we're making a beautiful community here, and the people here are warm and open, and it's been a wonderful, welcoming place to be.
And so I came with the mindset that we will possibly never go back home, and I'm okay with that, because if there's a place that I do get locked down in, I'd rather be here than anywhere else.